So good morning, everybody. Wanted to welcome you to our first session of the student design presentations for the 2020 Gulf Coast Green Student Competition. This year, the students were asked to create a concept level design of a new COVID-era dormitory for the University of Houston downtown that will function as a student housing facility under traditional circumstances and that can be utilized during a global pandemic. So teams were provided the site footprint for the actual future dormitory and asked to explore the possibilities and extremes of what a multifunctional building would look like in the eyes of a global pandemic. So this morning we have 5 student teams, both undergraduate and graduate, presenting their designs. And keep in mind that they each had about 2 to 3 weeks to put together what you're about to see. Now, before we get started, I'd like to briefly introduce our jury who will be selecting the top 3 winning teams. So joining us today, we have, and judges, if you could kind of just wave your hand when I call your name. We have Director of Sustainability at Kirksey Architecture and University of Houston alum, Kali Hodges. Kali currently serves on the Materials and Resources Technical Advisory Group of the U.S. Green Building Council and has been a member of the Gulf Coast Green Conference Planning Committee since 2012. We have Director of Civil Engineering at Walter P. Moore and Colorado State University alum, Charlie Penland. Charlie is a lead accredited professional and has served on various green infrastructure advisory committees in the region and is an active advisory member of the Rice Speed Center for Disaster Research. We have Senior Associate at PDR Corporation and Texas A&M and University of Michigan alum, Laura Beth Mertz. Laura is both a lead and well-accredited professional with over 15 years of experience in architecture and interiors and is passionate about design for mental health and well-being. We have Department Chair of the College of Sciences and Technology at the University of Houston downtown and Lehigh University alum, Dr. Vasilios Jouannis. Dr. Jouannis is an Associate Professor of Computer Science and Engineering Technology at UHD and works closely with the undergraduate students there. And last but not least, we have Director of Sustainable Design at Gensler Architects and University of Houston alum, Maria Perez. Maria is a lead fellow and currently serves on the GBCI Credentialing Steering Committee and the USGBC Texas Chapter Board of Directors. So thank you to all of our judges. And as a reminder, students will have 7 minutes to present, followed by a 5-minute question and answer period with the judges. And both students and jury, please remember to mute yourself when you're not speaking to minimize our background interruptions. All right. So now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first team, Duty Free Architecture, consisting of Sebastian Grande, Kelly Yu, and Taylor Lee from Rice University. So guys, go ahead and take it away.
Hi everyone, my name is Sebastian Grande.
My name is Kelly Yu, and with our partner Taylor Lee, we're excited to present our proposal for a healthy university dorm in the age of pandemic.
Great. Sorry, just arranging screens. Collective housing represents one of the fastest growing vectors of the disease because of the close proximity of many people and an enclosed conditioned space. At the same time, we as architects have to recognize that individuals still need to socialize and probably will still do so regardless of the risks. Architecture's role here is a diminished one. It cannot and should not police behavior, so our objective as designers becomes one of mitigation, without sacrificing the human quality of livable spaces. How can we reduce the number of people that an individual might encounter while moving through a building? How can we reduce the number of people a surface or object might be in contact with? And how can we create public shared spaces that reduce risk? With these questions in mind, our project explores how exposure reduction and social distancing can manifest at multiple scales. At the largest scale, the building is made up of 2 masses which move along the length of the site. On the south side, a larger building made up of collective housing and public amenities, and on the north side, a smaller building made up of more private units. These forms are oriented so that they can begin to configure the spaces around them into different regions. These aren't hard distinctions, but are instead implied through the use of hardscape, softscape, and shadows. The focal point is a central courtyard, which gently slopes upwards. The effect is a natural amphitheater, partially shaded and bordered by the covered walkways of either building.
At the smallest scale, our plan forms a kind of zipper of bedrooms and common spaces. Each bedroom is served by two different shared spaces, a larger, more public space along the north side, and a smaller, more private space along the south. These shared spaces are subsequently served by covered open walkways which run the length of the building. The bedrooms and bathrooms perform as the intermediary spaces which connect the north and south sides, and thus the shared spaces also create loose social clusters that run along the length of the building. Under typical conditions, these spaces are very generous, but this anticipates closures of other public spaces beyond the scope of the project, for example, libraries or coffee shops that students would otherwise work in. Under pandemic conditions, each double can become a single, and by locking one door in each bedroom and bathroom, the plan is no longer permeable. The building becomes two discrete strips of program running from east to west, each common space now only shared by two individuals. The operable glass partitions, which separate these spaces from the covered walkways, serve two functions. They ventilate social spaces to reduce the risk of airborne infection, and they also make these spaces more public.
Here you can see some of the typical sections of what the building might look like, just cutting in through different parts of the central courtyard. The ground level of the building is populated by basic amenities like wheelchair accessible units, seminar spaces, a mailroom, bike storage, and parking. Here are some quick views of the upper levels. And again, here's the ground floor with some of these amenities. The conditioned spaces, again, follow the material and organizational logic of the upper levels. Circulation is doubled along the north and south sides, and glass walls can fold away to open these spaces to natural ventilation. The circulation of the site also separates vehicular and pedestrian traffic between the north and the south. So again, moving through the site on the ground floor, moving through the site on the second floor. And this is where the ramp leads up to a terrace on the second level.
While the residential modules are organized linearly in plan, the horizontal datum of the floor plates shifts freely in section. The covered walkways step up and down between levels to create a continuous path moving horizontally through the building that functionally separate the single mass into discrete parts. The moments in which the floor plates step are shaded terraces that punch through the depth of the building, providing public outdoor spaces throughout the 4 floors of the building. The curving concrete walls, which punch through the height of the building, articulates the vertical circulation of stairs and elevators that are grouped around each terrace, combining a meandering horizontal circulation path with a more direct vertical circulation. As a result, the initially monolithic structure of this long dormitory building can be broken up into 7 distinct segments and further subdivided into a multiplicity of clusters for atypical and typical uses.
Here's a final image of the main structure of the building, demonstrating the porosity that it achieves. Thanks.
So is that your final slide? Okay.
Yep, that's it. Sorry.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Duty-Free Architecture. We'll now go to the jury. We'll go through the jury one by one for questions. So when I call your name, just unmute yourself. So we'll start with Kali.
Yeah, sure. I appreciate the presentation and the design. I guess I have one kind of general question for you all. Our understanding of the virus and its implications for the built environment has kind of been evolving, as y'all probably know. I mean, advice in the building industry has changed from March, all the way till now. And I'm just kind of curious, in your research for this project, what was the most surprising thing that you learned?
I think probably one of the most surprising and perhaps also the most troubling is the sort of changing nature of the virus, the mere fact that research is still in development and we have to design a building for this condition while we still don't really know what the specifics of sort of what social distancing needs to be, what interior ventilation really needs to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think what we learned was that the hardest thing to take into account is human behavior in battling this virus. And I think that's sort of what we wanted to focus on in creating a building that can let you safely live there, but also without feeling like you're always under quarantine or you're always restricted, because understanding that college students probably don't want to live in quarantine all the time, and by creating the best possible environment for them, the more likely it is for them to safely follow these precautions.
Right.
Okay, Charlie?
Okay. Did I catch how many units you had in there? Did you state
Right.
that?
We have 212 units, actually.
Okay. Okay. And so I guess my question is, how does, given the separation, the pandemic, and all the things associated with that, how does the building function with the rest of the campus? How are you integrating that with the rest of the campus?
I think, let's see, moving quickly to the sort of ground floor. One of the biggest things that we had to understand was that this site kind of it's sort of semi-removed from, like, the length of it it removes it from, or at least gives a sort of directionality to vehicular and pedestrian traffic. And so with that in mind, we wanted to really create sort of as much ease as possible moving between these two different sites while still like keeping vehicular traffic and pedestrian traffic separate. And so I think that manifests itself in the sort of like linear movement horizontally as you like enter from the east side to the west, or as you leave from west to east.
Okay. Thanks. That's my question.
Okay, Laura?
Yes, can you speak a little bit more about how you're addressing wellness in the both quarantine and non-quarantine condition for the occupants? How do they have access to that more than just necessarily seeing outside? Is there how are we addressing mental wellness and kind of the built condition you're creating?
I think we tried to address the wellness mainly through, we really try to focus on providing not only access to these outdoor spaces that you could occupy, but making those spaces as habitable as possible. So as Sebastian mentioned before, we try to place a lot of the public programs on the north side where it's less sunny, because as we know in Houston, when it gets hot and sunny, it can be very hard to stay outside. So for example, like all the shaded terraces are open up onto the north side. As well, they're not only located on the ground floor with the aim of, if you live on the 4th floor or the 3rd floor, for example, there's not that much of a physical or sort of mental distance to access these spaces regularly. As well, we tried to connect it to the bayou, because where there's, I think, a running path that people might use for physical wellness. And I think in terms of mental wellness, I think that's sort of hard for architecture to prescribe, but I think with the social clusters that we're trying to create, we try to use that to address the need for both privacy and socialization within the student experience, so that you always have a private space to yourself when you need to sort of be by yourself or work alone in quiet, but also a more public space that everyone sort of has equal access to in times of when you're partying or watching TV together, for example.
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Joannis?
First of all, thank you for your presentation. Very good one. Since I am from the University of Houston downtown, and we may have to seek money to build this structure, what is the cost?
Well, I think if you're going to ask us to begin specifying the cost of the building, maybe we should actually build it. But I think we imagine that most of the building will be concrete structure. A lot of it will be unconditioned, which will be reducing cost as well. In terms of terraforming, there aren't huge major changes in elevation to the site, other than the sort of central ramp. And I think those are a lot of sort of basic cost-cutting exercises. In terms of materiality, we were thinking a lot about sort of like sheet metal cladding as part of the elevation, something that might be a little bit sort of cheaper and easier to work with as well.
Well, thank you.
Okay, and Maria?
I think that I have actually two questions. The first one of the requirements in the competition is that you guys have to think about technology and how technology is going to help shape this building. Can you give a little more explanation on how you're going to be using technology on the building? And then the second question has to do basically with modular construction. Thinking about cost and making this cost efficient, have you guys considered modular construction as you go through these dorms, and if there's any suggestions for that?
I think speaking to the modular construction, at least the building itself is a series of modules simply arrayed along the sort of curvature of the site, which made both the design and I would imagine the hypothetical construction of this much simpler. I think, although we envision, I think structurally, I think this could be sort of compartmentalized very easily. Like there isn't a lot of sort of overwrought specific form other than the sort of places where we interrupt the module.
And speaking on technology, I think we chose not to perhaps focus the design on incorporation of technology because firstly, the technology or healthcare technology is rapidly evolving right now, and we didn't want to prescribe the way it should be because it'll probably change very soon. As well as I think a lot of the technology that is currently being used in terms of education at least is sort of widely available and more personal, like laptops, phones, for example, and like other technologies like PPE we think would be sort of up to building management to fit in, and we don't think that kind of shaping the design around specifically fitting those things would, or we don't think our building would impede the implementation of those things. But we also didn't want to sort of specify the building to match only those things.
Yeah, I
So
think,
like, for example,
yeah.
sneeze guards or like plexi walls.
Yeah, the reason why I was asking about technology is because you're using you're going to have a lot of natural ventilation here. Houston is very humid, so you will need some sort of sensors in the units to be able to track how much humidity in the air and to be able to understand when to turn the mechanical systems on. I'm assuming you're going to have a hybrid system in which you're going to have natural ventilation, but you're also going to provide mechanical system for when it's very hot in the summer. Houston is humid and hot, so having that technology to help you know when to turn those the air conditioning on and off, that should be a good component on this. So that's one of the reasons I asked about sensors and then being able to understand thermostat, humidity, and et cetera, et cetera.
Sorry, I think I misunderstood your question. I think in terms of mechanical systems, with the system of sliding doors or movable partitions that we have, we would imagine that there would be sensors so that when those are open for longer than a period of time, the air conditioning in that section would stop. But we would imagine that typically those would be closed unless it's a specific circumstance that the university is aware of or otherwise special events.
Okay. Yeah, and I think one of the biggest challenges in Houston is the air quality. Our air quality is not so good, so having the sensors and knowing when the air quality is good so you can open the windows, that would be ideal.
All right. Well, thank you to our duty-free architecture team. Our next team up is Team JEDS. Emily Cruz, Delilah Santos, Sumisola Agbula, and Janelle George from Texas A&M University. So Delilah, when you're ready, go ahead and get started. Oh, I'm sorry. I have to promote you. I apologize. There you go. Now you should have the ability to share your screen.
Okay, just gonna share. Okay, right here. Can y'all see that okay?
Yes.
Okay. This is our layout. It is a prime, simple way to illustrate a safe and efficient way for students to live in dorms while having all their essential needs met within the building.
So our first idea is going from an elevator to an escalator. We believe this idea is important because during a pandemic, elevators will most likely no longer be available. However, for move-in and move-out dates, and when students decide to bring in groceries, students will still require an easier form to carry their items to their dorms. Our goal is to place the escalators at the center of the building inside the cylinder shell. One of the biggest problems we encountered when coming up with this idea was a form for disabled students and/or staff to travel, which is why our intent is to create an escalator that can convert into larger steps when needed, where a wheelchair can fit and be carried up. We believe an escalator will be much safer to keep clean during the pandemic and easier to regulate the 6 feet distance rule, since we can mark the steps on the escalator on which students and staff would need to wait for, and we could also place hand sanitizer stations at the beginning and ends of this escalator. Our next idea is a solar panel garden concept. With global warming becoming a greater threat every day, we understand how important it is to reduce our carbon footprint, which is why one of our biggest goals throughout this project was to create a building made up of clean energy. We also kept in mind that during a pandemic, students, which is why we want to create as many study areas and changes of scenery as possible for students. We designed study domes to go in the garden that would be usable during a pandemic, since they would be placed 6 feet apart and face opposite sides of the garden. Our hope was to provide shade for these study domes using solar panels. We would also like to incorporate solar panels in the form of art and surround the study domes and art with more solar panels and greenery to create an aesthetically pleasing environment for students.
The study rooms in the dorms will contain a maximum of 12 students for the smaller rooms and 36 students for the larger study rooms. All desks will be 6 feet apart, and each individual desk would have a sneeze protector to further protect students as disease is airborne. The single unit studies at the side will also be covered and protected and labeled. There will be informative posters on the walls in the study room to inform students on how to protect themselves during an outbreak such as COVID. There will also be need for a convenience store in the dorms both during the pandemic and during regular school, and we decided to call our storage style. The convenience store will have automatic doors and will contain a maximum of 36 people at a time during an outbreak such as COVID. There will be 6 feet markers on the ground to enable students to keep the appropriate distance from themselves. There will also be multiple checkouts containing one worker at every given time, for the student workers to also be able to protect themselves. There will also be the option of self-checkout to further reduce contact. The convenience will include a pharmacy where students can buy over-the-counter medication in case they fall sick or begin to exhibit symptoms. The amount especially will be available. There will be need for a mail room so students can continue to receive their packages during quarantine, and online shopping is very prominent during quarantine. Students can either pick up their packages from the mail room or pick up their mail from the mailbox.
So, with the gym with management, we were planning to have a track outside. And then on the inside, there's going to be like these bubbles, these two little bubbles of pictures right here. And they are going to be placed like 6 feet apart from each other so that people can do yoga, fitness training, just body weight training, like with a trainer or with themselves. So the area right here will be with like a trainer. You can follow along, kind of like this picture shows it. And then these can be individual 6 feet apart bubbles where people can just do their own training, whatever they want to do for their body goals. And then, so that's this side of the gym. On this side of the gym, there's going to be a weight room and then a cardio section. And both of these parts of the gym are going to be reserved so that we can like reserve what type of equipment you want to use online. So that way we are limiting the amount of people that are inside the gym and making sure that everybody is evenly spread out and safe and comfortable when they are working on training the body. Dorm rooms are created in a way where each student is separated by this wall. It'd still be in the same dormitory for them to communicate and have someone to talk to. Another thing we want to add is the doorway here to where you can close it up and open it up whenever you please. Separate sinks. Having separate sinks creates a more sanitary, safe environment for the students. Also, the toilet area and the shower will have a 1-floor level, mostly contain carryout and food delivery processing. Another thing is this will become a more efficient way to keep students together. Of course, giving them the option to go down is something we're thinking about, but for the safety of the students, we're more so leaning towards allowing them to have the food delivered to their rooms or any place they are at. This allows restaurants to not have compacted, fast-moving lines to where they need to speed up the process. They will have more area to work with. The student will be allowed to go down to the restaurants and of course get in line, but of course 6 feet apart. Okay, that's the end of the video.
Okay, thank you, Team JEDS. So now for questions, we'll go in the opposite order this time. So we'll start with Maria.
Oh, I was in mute. I'm sorry. How many rooms are in this building?
There's going to be a total of 150 rooms.
151?
150.
Okay. And then just the other question, can you talk a little bit about this elevator? You say the elevator is at the center of the building. How this elevator is going to function during a pandemic like now? How people are going to go up and down without the 6 feet in distance? Can you explain a little more how that's going to work?
Yes, so we were planning on having separations, like being able to mark each step so that people can know how far apart they need to stand from each other.
Oh, so they will use the stairs all the way up. That's what you were saying?
Yes.
Instead of the elevator?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Joannis.
Again, thank you for your presentation. maybe I missed it. You have a picture of the building? Or is that one that you have there? And how does it blend with the rest of the buildings at the university? Does it carry the same theme, I guess, or is it totally different? That's one question. The other thing is, I looked at your typical room design, and it looks to me like a traditional dorm. Now, since we live in the COVID-19 era, how do I make sure, or I feel comfortable that I'm safe in that enclosure with someone else?
So for the second question, your second question on the dorms, it cut out in the video, but we plan to have like a door enclosing that side of the bedroom so that you can lock the airway from the other side so they feel more safe in that it's sanitary. Of course, we need to have the students kind of together because the area is compact and we want to fit as many students as we can in a safe and efficient way. Our idea was to, of course, use that center wall to have the two beds to make the room smaller and make more rooms. And then there will be like a door that can close up that area. Let me go to that section. So we just plan to have, I don't know if you can see the video right now. Can you see it?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so just construct a door to where we can close this area. And you can open and close it depending if the student wants, but preferably close it. The only areas that we find it difficult that the student will have to take into account that they need to be careful are, of course, the restrooms.
Also, to add on to the second question and to add on to what Delilah was saying, we tried to keep the dorm kind of traditional. So kind of like what you were saying in your question, we did try to make it kind of comfortable to the students that would reside there because we wanted to make sure that they still are comfortable and it is still like a traditional dorm. It just has more precautions and of course fits the COVID-19 situation that we are in right now.
Okay, Laura?
So can you address how the rooms themselves and how the students will have exposure to nature if they had to stay inside? I did like that you addressed when you were talking about the garden aspect, the garden aspect of having public art. I think that's something that's really important, kind of creating that sense of community, and that I think public art, celebrating public art really contributes to mental wellness. So it was kind of hard to see, I agree with the last comment of how the building is situated on the site, exactly to kind of understand what is the connection that someone would have if they were in their dorm room to the outside, and then how does the building relate to the site?
So our plan was to make the garden on the rooftops. So in the left side of the building, it would be on the roof of the second floor, and then on the right side will be on the roof of the third floor. So depending on what side your dorm is, that will be the side that you can, which side you can use the garden for. And we were hoping that it could be just a place where students could go and take a rest because they will be most likely in the building the majority of the time during a pandemic.
Okay, Charlie?
Okay. I got a zillion questions, but I only get to ask a couple. So did I understand that you are going to have escalators to every floor?
Yes, that
instead of elevators. So there'll all be escalators, and you're coming up with a concept where you can actually accommodate handicap on the escalator. Is that correct?
yeah, that was the plan because we were researching and we kind of saw that in other countries they have been making escalators that can actually convert to instead of 1-by-1 steps to 2-by-2.
Yeah, I've seen those. Those are nice. Okay, so I just wanted to clarify that because it wasn't necessarily elevators. I guess the other question on your garden, I assume that's down on ground level, and I guess I'm curious about, you've got floodplain issues, you got a train track running by you on the north, you got Metro Rail on the east. How does that get protected and become usable?
So the plan was to make the garden on the actual building, like on top, on the roof
Okay.
levels.
Okay, I didn't understand that. Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
Okay, great. And Holly?
Yeah, I appreciate the presentation. I appreciate y'all really diving kind of into the weeds on trying to solve some difficult challenges related to moving people vertically in a building and how to organize workspaces and workout spaces. But I feel like we're reading a book and we just like skipped immediately to like page 215 or something. Kind of want to give you all the chance maybe to articulate an overall concept within which some of your problem solving is taking place. I mean, similar to some of the other judges, I guess I would just have the question of how is this, how did this building arrive at the form that it's at? How is it responding to the site and the climate? You know, what makes this building belong on UHD's campus right next to White Oak Bayou instead of at, you know, the University of Arizona or Yale or, you know, University of Toronto or something? How does it belong here?
The first slide was showing like the overall building, how it's going to look on the outside based off of the plan that you all gave to us. And the following slides were just showing the major rooms in the building that would have to necessarily adapt in a situation like COVID. And so we were just basically explaining the things that we were going to change up in like a regular dorm in UH I'm taking that to if it were in a situation of an outbreak such as COVID. And so all the slides that we showed you, the main buildings, the gym, the mail room, the convenience store, the study rooms, and the restaurants, how people get food. We're just trying to highlight the major things that would have to change in an outbreak. But it's still like a regular dorm. Everything is still like, every other thing is still going to be the same, basically.
Okay.
And
well,
I would like to add on that, yes, there is a lot of information that is kind of missing and would need to be more thought out, but the main topics that we illustrated today were more so what the student would be asking, like this is where they will be living. They want to know where they will be staying, their rooms, the gym, what they're going to be eating, how they're going to be efficient and like still be successful college students. And these ideas are just like really general on like what the students would be asking us. So yes, there is a lot of more information we would have to explain for our project here.
And I also wanted to add, that also most of the issues we highlighted were issues that we also personally experienced during the online school session that we had for the last semester.
Yeah, y'all certainly have a unique perspective on that, I'm sure, and definitely appreciate your attempt to grapple with some of those challenges. So, thank Thank you.
Okay, thank you to Team JEDS. And so next up, we're going to have Team Green Coffee Bean. So let me just, so Laura, whenever you're ready, you can go ahead and share your screen.
Yes. Good morning, my name is Laura Ross, and I'm here to present what I have called the Green Coffee Bean design. Before I start, I just want to tell you that the main goal of this design is to have an individual collective-centered integration for the students at any time. Located at downtown Houston, we have a 7.4-acre that we needed to develop into a dormitory building for University of Houston downtown. This design was inspired by Coffee Bean. Why the Coffee Bean? Because coffee represents reunion, represents community. That's why in the middle of the design, zero destruction and zero destruction, that I have called the Coffee Bean Cellular Center. This center is connected to the museum. And we will also have this outdoor area for the students. We will have a walking trail.
Hey, Laura, it's really difficult to hear your audio.
Okay, sorry. I put more volume. I hope this will work better. I'm sorry. Good morning, my name is Laura Rojas, and I'm here to present what I have called the Green Coffee Bean design. Before you start, I just want to tell you that the main goal of this design is to have an individual and collective center integration for the students at any time. Located at downtown Houston, we have a 7.4-acre that we needed to develop into a dormitory building for the University of Houston downtown. This design was inspired by Coffee Bean. Why the Coffee Bean? Because coffee represents reunion, represents community. That's why in the middle of the design, zero destruction and zero destruction, that I have called the Coffee Bean Cellular Center. This center is connected to the two museum buildings. And we will also have this outdoor area for the students. We will have a walking trail and we will have a coffee mat for the parents combined. This is not with the racing crew. So we will have two buildings with two types of apartments. One of the buildings will have the same characteristics. It's one of them will be a half-story building with a total of 100 apartments per building. We will have a multi-area study with each floor that you will see here in the middle, and we will have the main entrance here in this side, and we will have the emergency system and two independent buildings. We will have access control in each main entrance and corridor entrance. We will have lighting control and post restrictions on the elements. Mainly here we have the library, and this is administrative practices dedicated for the library. And we have restrooms as well, also like the stuff dedicated to staff information.
Okay, so Laura, unfortunately, I think the audio didn't really work very well. So we couldn't really hear most of that. So I think there's probably going to be quite a few questions. Because of time constraint, we're not able to troubleshoot what the issue was, but I'm going to go ahead and just let the panelists ask their questions. And if you want to maybe use the opportunity to explain some more of what was said in your video, that may be helpful. So
Okay.
we'll go ahead and start this time with Laura.
Yes, sorry, unfortunately, Laura, we couldn't hear anything, but I did appreciate that you had it typed on the slides, because then we could at least read what it was that you were trying to say. I appreciate that you holistically kind of addressed not only kind of the relations to the site, but also kind of the specific dorms and the amenities. So I appreciate the holistic presentation. A few questions. So one question was, I noticed when it comes to the dorms, you have, half of the people kind of facing a courtyard type of space, but then, 50% are facing kind of a parking lot scenario. So, one of the prompts was, how are we creating physical wellness and exposure to nature, especially if someone's not able to leave their dorm for a certain amount of time. So how would you address those units that are kind of facing that kind of unsightly parking lot situation?
Okay, first of all, I'm sorry about the sound issues. I hope I can answer your questions now. So I think the people that is facing the parking lot, I also wanted to have a lot of planting around. So every apartment is going to have a balcony that would give the student at least exposure to have some fresh air. And I also wanted to add planting around all the balconies, just because also that to give a little bit of fresh, a little bit of a natural exposure. Definitely is going to be different for the people that is going to be looking at the outside of the outside facility, but I think the green area here, this planting will help them to feel a little bit of natural have a natural exposure as well.
Okay. And then my second question was, can you expand a little bit more on your thought on the circulation for the, I guess you called it the kind of coffee bean circle. It looks to me as if you could perhaps have one-way circulation if you didn't want to have this kind of like cross-pollination of passing someone when you're trying to reach an amenity. Was that the thought behind the physical form of that space?
Yes, well, actually, if we are in a COVID situation, let's say right now, we will have to coordinate the circulation for people, trying to don't let them meet each other. But it's also the reason why I pick it to be a circle is because that allows us to, that allows the student to just to have one path that they can see everything that is going on. They can see who's coming. So to avoid that type of they don't have to. We don't have a crowd of people in the same place. Yes, so that's.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's go to Collie next.
Sure. Yes, thanks, Laura. I had similar issues with the audio, so it was mainly kind of a visual presentation. So apologize if you actually had addressed this question in your presentation, but we just couldn't hear it. But I guess my question is, COVID has obviously presented a design challenge in how we can adapt buildings and make them versatile to still function during pandemic conditions. And that leads to a lot of technical challenges. That's a big part of the subject of this competition. I saw a mention of touchless fixtures. Could you maybe expand more on the use of technology in the building, how it is facilitating connection or promoting occupant health during pandemic conditions?
Yes, so one of the reasons I pick access control to be one of my main points to have in this building is because I think with access control, we just not limit the amount of people that get inside the building. We can also, I was thinking about the student can have a mobile app, and with that app, they don't even have to open the doors with their hands. They can use the app to open doors just because we have access control. I'm also proposing to have a touchless elevator, and I was reading into that, and it's something they are thinking about doing. And it can be also controlled with your phone. So you just can get inside the elevator and control with your phone which floor you want to go, and it's connected already. The same access control, it helps to the elevator to have certain amount of people. So if we don't want to have more than 6 or 4 people, it will allow us to do that. So I think that's what I wanted to do with the technology. I also wanted to talk about touchless fixtures and control and lighting control, because that allow us to don't have to touch all this. Like if I want to go to the restrooms, we don't have to touch them, it activates automatically. So I think that how we can use the technology in this type of situations while we can get better, while technology gets better.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's go to Maria next.
Great work. I think you thought about a lot of things in this we couldn't hear, but the first question is how this building interacts with the university, so the community connection. Can you talk a little bit about that? And also about the roof. I couldn't hear, is that solar panels on the roof that you're considering, or can you expand a little more about what you're thinking on that and how that connection with the community is going to work?
Yes, so for the first question, when I was looking at the site, I know the school is, if I'm not wrong, the school is kind of crossing down this river. So I think one way we can connect this space to the school is, we have this social center, this coffee bean facility. We can have a library, we can have even a conference room where the school can it's part of the school. So the library can be something the school is involved. The conference room can be one day if we need to do a classroom, we need to have a class that needs to be face-to-face, the school can participate and be there with the students in these areas. For the roof question, yes. So my main purpose here that you can see here is to have solar panels. Of course, I left a lot of space. I'm not counting with mechanical equipment, and that's something that is going to take some space here. And this here in the middle is like a glass roof that will allow to have a sunlight. My main goal was to do like take advantage, maximize the daylight to avoid the use of electrical energy. So here, open roof, and one aspect if you can see here in the floor plan, I have these voids. These are voids area that will allow, because if we have the roof, it will like open roof. I don't have these voids, the light is just gonna go to the 5th floor. Having these voids is gonna allow me to have the light all the way through the 1st floor, at least somehow.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, Charlie?
It took all my questions. That's
No.
not fair. Very nice visual presentation on it. I think you covered a lot very nicely. I guess sort of the big thing on this is how the rooms themselves function differently from a COVID situation versus a typical situation. Could you get into that a little bit?
Yes, so if I look at the apartments, if I tell you the truth, the rooms do not have any special, I mean, of course, as I told you, we have the touchless fixtures and lighting control.
Yeah.
But I was thinking more, when I was in, right now I'm living out of college, but when I was living in college, normally you have this, the resident apartments are next to each other, it's a very tiny room. And right now, if I'm a student and I want to decide to be living in the school or going back home with my family, what will make me stay? And I think that's why I wanted to give like more like an apartment look for these dormitories, to make the student feel that, so they will have, in this case, the difference of a normal room is they will have their own kitchen, they will have their own bathroom and their own space. You need to think about mental wellness as well. When you are in a normal apartment room in a college, you have your roommate next to you, you don't have a space for you, you don't have your own space. And in this type of situations, that's important. That can, like after 3 months of being in this situation, you need to think about that. So technology-wise, there is nothing different in this room. It's a regular apartment, but I think what it makes it different is that it's not normal to have an apartment like this in college, unless you go to the the high-level apartments and you pay more for that. So I think that's how it worked. I also wanted to have a balcony. I have never seen, I mean, I was doing my research, some schools have it. I have never seen a balcony in a resident hall. But I think I have a balcony right now where I live, and it helps me a lot. Like, especially if I cannot really go outside for nothing, it gives you fresh air. You can do at least some exercise out there, or at least just read a book. It changes your environment too. So I hope that answers the question.
Okay, I like the coffee bean idea. That's cool. That's my questions.
And Dr. Jonas?
Thank you very much. Very good explanations, good presentation from a slides viewpoint. You answered a lot of the questions that I had, but I'm curious. This building will be in a zone that is prone to flooding. The parking lot is going to be on the ground, and it seems that the first floor also will be at the ground level. How do you account, I guess, for these issues that are inherently present in that site? And what could be the cost for such a building?
Okay, so
10 million, 50 million, $200 million, what?
Okay, cost-wise, I'm thinking this is a glass, like a curtain wall structure. Of course, it's gonna. I'm not very familiar, but I'm thinking that will add some cost of it. Regular concrete slab. I will say around, well, I was just gonna give it a shot, like 50,000 million. I'm not sure. I'm thinking it's not gonna be, I mean, I know because of the materials I'm proposing to use in the facade, it's not gonna be the cheapest way to do it, but for sure it's gonna be sustainable and it's gonna make a difference for the students. And if I understood correctly, I'm sorry, the first question. So what you are telling me, this area is going to be a flattened surface, the first floor and the parking lot? So
yes,
how...
yeah, there is a bio there, and typically that area floods almost every other year.
I think that's why, well, I couldn't finish it. I was thinking I'm a civil engineering, and that was the first thing I wanted to, and I like stormwater management. So here, this area that you see wide here, I wanted to have like a lake, but not really a lake. I wanted to have a stormwater management facility, or I wanted to add it. We can even add it around here to get some stormwater. I think that's how we can solve it, and especially, I mean, we have green area, and that will give us some natural look. So we can add. That's how I will resolve it. Some stormwater added here, like a lake or something that catch the water for avoiding flooding.
And one more item, are you presenting on behalf of a team, or are you a team of one?
I'm by myself. Of course, I had to ask some architectural advice because I'm not an architect, but this is myself.
Okay, thank you.
Great, well, thank you, Green Coffee Bean. And just a quick update, we had a team just in the last couple minutes drop out from the afternoon session. So our team 5 has graciously volunteered to move to the afternoon spot. So team 4 will now be the last team to present this morning, and we'll have 4 additional presentations in the afternoon. So team 4 is project 1. So I will add you guys real quick here. And so on project 1, we have Madeline Mouton, Francis Din, Ellie Barbin, and Lauren Hinson from Louisiana State University.
Okay. Do you see everyone? Do you see everything?
Yes, we see student competition, Gulf Coast Green 2020.
Okay. And is my team ready? Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Close the pop-up.
Howdy, folks. My name is Madeline Mouton.
I'm Lauren Hinson.
I'm Francis Din.
My name is Eli Barbin.
And we're Project 1. We are one of the teams from the Louisiana State University, and we are here to talk to you about how we transform the UHD parking lot into a sustainable student living during a global pandemic.
Our design philosophy of Project 1 is to better connect students to a caring community within a sustainable and beautiful environment. The 14 dorm halls encircling the Pac Center provide each student with a personalized community to be a part of immediately upon arrival to campus. The Pac Center, our main building, provides spaces for nourishment, meeting, well-being, and relaxation. Together, these buildings, along with our beautifully designed park and parking lot, creates a self-sustaining residential village that is ready to tackle any challenge. The residential life we designed is meant to provide each student with multiple communities to be a part of immediately upon arrival, so that no student feels alone or overwhelmed during their time at UHD. Our dorms are 4 stories with a basement, housing 8 students in 4 two-person rooms on the 2nd and 3rd floor. The first floor contains a kitchen, living room, study room, and dining room, designed to promote a shared living experience among students. The basement holds laundry equipment, The top floor is a grass roof terrace that holds seating and space for rooftop activities. Students can also get a full view of downtown Houston from the terrace. Here are a few renderings of the dorm's interior spaces. Each dorm is equipped with swipe bar doors for the front door and the second and third floor doors, which promote safety and allows the building to be co-ed if UHD desires. Roommates may be chosen by the student, but hallmates, we believe, should remain randomly selected in order to inspire new friendships. By limiting the number of hallmates to 8 students and making selection random, it will allow for all 8 students to be a support group for each other. The support groups can further be divided into floor mates and roommates. So no matter what you're going through, you should have at least 3 different peer groups to turn to for support.
And now pandemic time. We built multiple buildings, also keeping in mind about how to mitigate the spread of sickness. The population density is spread out and smaller this way. If one person from one dorm gets infected in isolation, the spread can only get to those 8 people instead of the overall 100. It also helps by making it easier to track down who's infected. The open air communal area on the roof allows people to hang out within the dorm without the fear of infection. The open air also keeps it well ventilated, which is a way to keep people from getting sick. A hand sanitizer dispenser being presented right away in the entrance keeps people mindful about keeping clean. And the first floor being able to automatically open keeps germs from spreading.
So that wraps up our dorms. This is the Pac Center. It's the main building that's central to the community. It contains student necessities and assistance and is named after its resemblance to the lovable arcade character Pac-Man. Pac Center's first floor has many different features, one of which is the front desk, which is located to the right. These organize appointments to the administrative offices behind it, as well as handling student queries. On the left is a combination convenience store and cafe, which is great for on-the-go food or basic amenities. The Student Health Center on the far side of the building puts student health front and center and is more easily accessible for those living nearby than the other student health center on campus. There's also a room for delivery and cleaning bots and their charging hubs, but we'll get into that later. The first floor is flexible in its use for student organizations that want group events or any other type of organization. The cafe and courtyard are designed to be the social hubs of the Pac Center. The second floor of the Pac Center has multi-purpose rooms that can be classrooms and study rooms, as well as club rooms if you would like to rearrange them. And the third floor is a rooftop terrace with seating, greenery, and a view of the Houston skyline.
So if the quarantine happens again, the center hub will still remain the center of action. The Student Health Center is isolated from all the other areas and is connected to the staircase, which will allow the second floor to become quarantine housing if necessary. The convenience store and dining tables presented in the top picture will become separation shopping experience that streamlines students down one aisle where it's easier to maintain cleanliness and place distance markers to make it a quick grab and go. The building should always be cleaned, but it could be cleaned even more by sanitizing it every night with a clean mist. And UHC should also provide care packages with cleaning supplies and PPE so that students can take care of themselves and others.
We also hope to incorporate lots of technology to provide security, comfort, and wellness to all of our residents. For example, automatic doors and card-activated locks will minimize this unnecessary touching. Hand sanitizer dispensers in central places will help fight the spread of germs. Motion sensing lights and solar panels on rooftops and covered parking will increase energy efficiency. We'll also have robots in the Pac Center performing 2 main functions: cleaning and disinfecting the air in high traffic areas, and delivery robots that can bring food or supplies to dorms under quarantine. Our facility features an abundance of green spaces to be used and enjoyed at all times, but these spaces will become even more important in times of isolation. Each dorm building has a rooftop garden with a wonderful view. The Pac Center's terraces can be enjoyed even while maintaining social distancing. Together with the expansive green field and swamp-like pond and boardwalk area, our facility can give residents a connection with nature under any circumstances. To close, we believe that the Smart Village is the perfect residence hall for both the good times and the bad. Our 8-person units foster a sense of community and will help mitigate the stresses of isolation. Our buildings and grounds are adaptable and can change to meet the needs of many situations. Our green spaces preserve the spirit of natural beauty, and our designs, materials, layout, and management are sustainable and efficient.
And that wraps up our presentation. Here's a little bit of info on us. And so please, if you would like, contact us. Please give us your constructive criticism. And now we're open for questions.
Great, thank you, Team Project One. We're going to start with colleagues. I know he has to jump off in a couple minutes.
Great, appreciate that. Very good presentation. I appreciate that all of y'all spoke, and very informative, and also really appreciate the scope of your design considerations, that you all looked at everything from the site to communal spaces and individual spaces. I guess I jabbed kind of just a general question. COVID has caused us to question a lot of the sustainability best practices that a lot of us have worked really hard to make mainstream, and then it's made other ones be even more important. So maybe speak a little bit on the synergies you see between the sustainable features of the building and those strategies that are appropriate for COVID. Don't all speak up at once, please.
I'm trying to think how to answer the question.
Is the question not clear?
Yeah, it's a little not clear.
Okay, all right. I'm thinking that there's certain sustainable strategies that become especially important in dealing with COVID. And then there are other ones that we would normally recommend that actually kind of are counter to what you would recommend to prevent the spread of infection. And just kind of curious if y'all can comment on that. What sustainable features of your building do you think function well to deal with pandemic conditions?
One feature that probably accomplishes both of those goals is having the separate units. It both saves on building materials and also will help to isolate and stop the spread of disease.
Okay.
Continuing with that idea, it's like knowing, like living in dorm living, it's how if like you get the flu, like one person gets the flu in the experience, the whole dorm is going to experience the flu. So having these separate buildings helps, like even little things like the flu, like keeping, yeah, it would suck that 8 people might get sick from that, but it will keep a lower population getting sick.
Okay, let's go to Charlie next.
What I really like about this team is all the civil engineers on it, so just had to make that comment. Very interesting, obviously lots of buildings mean lots of extra cost, and so, I assume that there are other things that help mitigate that, and I think that was probably what you were trying to get at a little while ago. So one of the things about this that people at LSU ought to know real well is that we're right next to the bio, and that produces a lot of challenges to your design. How does your design address the fact that you're in the floodplain and surrounded by railroad tracks and somewhat isolated from the rest of the campus? So tell me a little bit about how the site works.
Christina, can I interrupt just for 1 second? I apologize, Charlie, but I just discovered a technical issue that I can't start the next Gulf Coast Green session without ending this one. So now I can't have 2 simultaneous Zooms going. So we might need to wrap up in the next just couple of minutes. I'm sure my presenters in the next session are anxiously wondering why they're not able to get in and kind of set up. So maybe y'all could briefly answer Charlie's question, and we might have to cut the Q&A a little short. Christina, I apologize.
Okay, so to try to answer a little bit on your flooding kind of issue, because I think that's kind of the basics. We looked up the FEMA flood plan before we started this, just to make sure that there wasn't really any too much flooding. issue, and we noticed that it said that it didn't have any flooding issue. But for safety reasons, the pond is on the far end and closer to the bayou, just so that if that starts to overspill, then the water is at one end of it. And the whole, well, we didn't talk about the elevation of the actual place. It could all slope so that it goes into the pond at the end, or more towards the bayou.
Okay. So we want to wrap it up then, colleague, because I know you need to run.
Yeah, sorry about that. Just thanks everybody for joining, and thank you to our students and judges. Just a quick reminder, winners are going to be announced tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. before the keynote address. And thanks everybody. Hope to see you again at 1 p.m. for our second session.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.